Today's episode features the original referral coach, Bill Cates. Bill is a consultant, coach, Hall of Fame speaker, author, and fellow podcaster. He has helped thousands of financial professionals and firms to tap into exponential growth by focusing messaging, maximizing clients' engagement, and leveraging relationships. He joins the show to talk about all of this and more. This episode is one you don't want to miss. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right. Well, Bill Cates, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm so excited, number one, to have you, but also to see you, even though we're on Zoom. It's been a long time and you're doing such great work. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a long time since I stepped through the doors in Shelton, Connecticut. Used to love it up there. But thank you. It's great to see what you're doing too, and the success you're having. You deserve it. So thank you,
Bill. I appreciate that. And you know, some people will say that you're a motivational speaker, but I would say that it's a combination of really you help people with strategies and tactics to grow their business. And obviously with that comes some motivation. But what brought you to this path to do this? And it seems like it was your calling, but what brought you to it?
Yeah, if there is such thing as a calling, this is mine. I remember when I wrote my first book in 95, came out in 96, I'd stay up till 2, 3 in the morning. It would just like it'd be flowing for me. It's like, where is this stuff coming from? I don't know. And 30 years later, practically, it's still coming. So yeah, and it's great that you mentioned about the motivational speaker part, because I believe that I motivate by providing great ideas, actionable ideas. And if it's a speech, then it's a fun thing. There's some stories and examples of other advisors and what they're doing. So it's kind of in the vein of motivational, but very high content. And really what happened for me is I used to own a book publishing company, 2 actually, and I sold them both. One I sold for a pretty good amount of money. The other I sold to get out of a bad partnership and to get away from the debt. So when someone tells you they sell a business, yeah, sometimes it's good. Sometimes they're making money. Sometimes they're just getting away from something, right? In any event, a buddy of mine, Frank Gingo, said, you should be a professional speaker. You'd be good at it. Because I'd hosted some charity events and things. And that's what, piqued my interest a little bit. And I'm an old drummer in a rock and roll band. So I kind of like being on stage. I don't mind being on stage. And slowly worked my way into this world of speaking professionally. And of course, that's morphed to podcasting, virtual, in-person, writing, everything that comes with it. So it's, I'm a content creator and curator and disseminator.
Yeah. And that fits you. I think that's a great way to explain it. I never knew about the publishing business. That makes sense why, seeing the books behind you. So it makes sense why you're so effective at doing that.
That's my ego wall. I call it my ego wall.
I love it. It looks great there. So thanks. I guess before I dig into some of the stuff you're doing now, I have one question. When I think about you coaching advisors in our industry, I would say you're probably working with 5 different generations now. There's still people that are, floating around this industry, in their 70s, and there's obviously new kids coming on board in their early 20s. When you are writing or when you're speaking, how do you handle that? Do you look at them differently, or do you do your same thing and hope they get it,
Yeah. So a few things on that. The principles of the things I teach around client acquisition, referrals, introductions, et cetera, the principles never change. They don't change for anybody. The principles are always the same. You got to be more referable. You have to find a way to be appropriately proactive, prospecting versus marketing and all those various things, right? So the principles are the same. The strategies don't change too much either, but certainly the tactics change, and the tactics have changed with the times. Because now a lot of virtual, a lot of Zoom, that changes things a little. And then how the level of success someone's having also changes a little bit, because, for instance, if someone's brand new in this business and they're hungry and they need to, pay the rent, the mortgage and everything else, they're probably going to be a little more proactive for referrals. They're probably going to be I don't want to say aggressive, but they definitely need to keep it top mind. And, the old story is if that prospect fogs a mirror, meaning if they're breathing, they'll talk to them. But folks that have been in this business for a long time, they have usually the luxury of being a little more selective. And so now we're really talking quality, not quantity. And is it the right match for the advisor and the client? And it should always be the right match. We should always think in those terms. That, to me, that's a principle that never changes. So yeah, little things are different. Some things aren't much different. The younger generation certainly loves the digital side of things more, and we got to be able to communicate. One thing I'll mention is a lot of veterans, a lot of folks have been at this business for a long time. I talk about the next generation and being introduced to the next generation for several reasons. First of all, your clients love it when you help their kids. Second of all, the money's eventually going to go there. And so you better have a relationship with them. But I've had folks say, well, they don't care about me. They don't want to hear from me. They don't want their parents' advisor. I said, well, that attitude, they certainly don't. For someone who's been in this business for long, you better think about making your book of business or keeping your book of business a little younger, right?
Yep.
Especially if you're in a kind of situation where you can sell the book. Because if it's just a bunch of folks who are aging and they're all on distributions and annuities, it's not worth as much, right? So things do change a little depending on where you are in the business.
Well, it's interesting. So 2 questions on that. So one, we talked about Zoom and, in your travels, coaching lots of advisors, do you feel like many of them have made the conversion to Zoom, or do you think some are resisting it? What are you seeing out there? I'm just curious.
Yes, and yes. It reminds me when the computers came out. You're younger than I am, but you don't remember that. There was a time when guys would brag, I don't even know how to turn my computer on. Well, that's not something you brag about anymore.
Yes.
So yeah, some were doing Zoom even before COVID. Yep. I've interviewed a few for my podcast. And so that for them was like, no big deal. I've been doing this for years. And others, it took a little while. And now a lot of firms I've worked with since COVID has passed, a lot of advisors and firms have tried to get back to doing a lot more in person. Zoom can work. In person's usually better, but it's more time consuming. Takes a little longer to build a strong relationship on Zoom, generally speaking. Than it does in person. But now it's a hybrid. Most people are doing a hybrid. I know with my advisor, I meet with him twice a year in person and we do a Zoom twice a year. Right. And that's perfect for me and probably saves him a little time.
Sure. A lot of time, I'm sure. So one of the things that you talk about is leverage turning incremental growth into exponential growth. How did you come up with that? And what does that mean?
Yeah, it's about multiplication. It's multiplying your best clients. Whatever a best client is for you, you want to be clear on what that is. First of all, if you want to try to multiply them. But there's a couple different ways to create exponential growth in this business and to scale the business. One is to buy another practice, right? Or to absorb clients from another advisor. A lot of folks are doing that right now, as you know, on different levels. You're seeing a lot of that absorption and merging. That's one way. Some people like it, some people don't. The other way is to multiply your best clients. And so the way I think about it is the lifetime value of a client is not just the business you can do with them over a lifetime, which can be substantial in some cases and good for everybody. But the other part of that equation is who they can introduce you to over a lifetime. But if you're not thinking, if that's not in your awareness, right? If you're not thinking about that, it could be right in front of you and you'll miss it. There's so much opportunity in front of most advisors that they're just not, they're missing it because their awareness isn't tuned into it. And so that's kind of what I mean by that. And one client can lead to 2 and 2 can lead to 4 and 4 to 8. And that's where you get that multiplier effect. And eventually, Paul, since clients who come into a practice through a referral are more likely to give a referral, would make sense. They'd be more predisposed, sure. That it starts to take on a life of its own after a while. It starts to have that snowball rolling down a hill effect where it gets easier and easier and easier to get more referrals / introductions when you start to think in terms of client multiplication.
I like that. I always talk about lifetime value, and I don't think it's spoken enough about in this industry. And I remember when I started out over 30 years ago, I remember a LIMRA stat and I was just selling life insurance. And there was a LIMRA stat that said people buy life insurance 7 times in a lifetime. Most of the ones I sold was their first. So I always said it gave me great strength to walk out and say, all right, if I service them properly, I got 6 more sales here, and I think that that's probably taking it to the next level. Who could they actually introduce me to is a whole nother thing. Earlier you made a point about their children, and there's 2 stats that, that there's one that's new that not a lot of people have heard, but that 90% of the book, if you don't have the children as clients, ends up leaving you. Yes. So you lose the value, to your point. But here's a new one that I've heard. If you take life events like married, divorce, retirement, 42% of the times when one of these 10 life events happen, clients actually leave their advisor. So if you're not doing what you're doing and getting deeper into those relationships, I think that's a huge challenge,
Yeah, I had not heard that one. It does kind of make sense. Because first of all, a lot of times the people you bring into your practice, you're bringing them in because there is a life event, right? There is money in motion, life event, something happening, and their radar goes up to meet, right? And they'll respond to a lead or they'll respond to a referral. And so it does make sense. And if something happens and they say, I should probably be talking to a professional about this, and they don't have that kind of relationship with you that you think you have with them, then they are going to look and make sense. So like you said, going deeper and staying in touch with them so when those things happen. And you can actually, in some cases, if you have a decent enough relationship, you can actually see them coming. They're going to happen. And so you make sure that you have some reminders just to pop up. Fred Jones says he's going to retire at 65. Let's keep looking at that. Is that happening for him? And whatever it might be, right? And just being aware. Yeah,
I agree. But you said earlier about your own advisor doing the 4 meetings. It's very hard to miss things if you're paying attention in those 4 meetings. So. Yep. Switching gears though, in your speeches and your videos, you have a bunch of sayings that I've heard over and over again. If you're not relevant, you're going to be ignored. Or if you're not compelling, you're going to be forgotten. Give me more on those.
Yeah. So those 2 came from my last book that came out right before COVID, bad timing, called Radical Relevance. And it's how advisors talk about their value and niche market and all the various things. And you got to be relevant, right? The introductions you get when you're getting introduced, you got to make sure that introduction that, Laura's given to George or whatever is relevant to George. So he'll actually pay attention, and then it turns into opportunity. So, I know you're going to mention, I wrote my book, Language Referrals, which is out, and I'm holding up a dummy copy right now. So now, Paul, you're looking at 2 dummies. But anyway, so, words make a difference. So let me give you a few. One pretty obvious one is referrals versus introductions. And it used to be a long time ago when you guys started in this business, it was called the referred lead. Call George, use my name. Well, George doesn't pick up his phone anymore. He's wondering, why did, this person get their name out? And, who is this person calling me, right? And so that just doesn't work like it used to work. And people don't pick up their phone. So now we want to use the word that represents what we really want, which is an introduction, a connection. So even though I call the book The Language of Referrals, and I do that on purpose because we always, a little marketing tip here, whenever we're developing marketing copy or promotional copy, we always want to think in terms of concepts and words that are already in the head of the audience, already in the brain. See, if I called this the language of introductions, people would kind of get it, but it wouldn't be quite as obvious and clear and a slam dunk as the language of referrals, right?
Fair.
And we want to really start using the word referrals. I mean, I'm sorry, introductions.
Introductions, sure.
I can confuse myself because it represents what we want. I'll give you 2 more. I've been teaching this forever. You've heard me talk about this. It's what title of one of my books. Don't keep me a secret. Don't keep us a secret. Someone says, hey, this is great. We appreciate you. We're great. Don't keep us a secret. Simple little thing, kind of cute, kind of fun, never hurts a relationship, sometimes turns into opportunities on the spot. sometimes down the road, but it does get it into the conversation, which is important early on. And the other one, this is around objections and concerns, and it's really around any kind of listening. But with objections that people give us, first thing we want to do is explore the objection, is understand the objection before we might think of sharing a different way to look at it with them. And those words are, tell me more. Just tell me more. And just try it next time someone says, I want to think about this, or I'm not sure about going now. That's fine. I get it. Tell me more. And what are they going to do? They're going to tell you more. Try it at an event, a social event where someone's telling you about their vacation. Instead of you trying to jump in about your vacation, just say, tell me more.
Give me more.
And they're going to tell you more, and they're going to like you better because you're actually interested. Hopefully you're
listening to them. Yeah.
So those are, and we have a lot of those in the back of the book, these little phrases I've picked up that can be fit into lots of different scenarios.
Well, first off, congratulations on language of referrals.
Thank you.
And I was going to say language of introductions, just to be funny with you, right? But what's in this book that isn't in the others?
Yeah, it just to piggyback on what you just said about funny. I was doing a program and in a live presentation in front of an agency, and I'm talking about difference between referrals and introductions, and then I get to the point of being more referable. How to be more? He says, "Don't you mean introducible?" And I go, "Yeah, but see, there's an example of." Yeah. So I use the word referrals for internal use only, right? Not to be shared with public, but when we're with the public, we want to use introductions. So what's in the book that isn't in my other book? Well, a lot more language and hence the title. It still covers the basic principles and strategies because the language fits under those principles and strategies. But it's my most tactical book, and I know folks love tactics, and tactics are important as long as you're using the right strategy. But here's what I've learned. And I know you've seen this in your industry. I mean, in what you've done forever, Paul, is if people don't see themselves doing a strategy, so for instance, let's call the strategy being proactive for referrals, introductions, right? If they don't know what to say, if they don't know how to say it in a way that's going to feel genuine for them and hopefully not pushy or needy, then that strategy is no longer accessible to them. Right? You could say ask for referrals, ask for introductions, but if they don't know how to do it or they don't feel confident, then that strategy is not accessible. And so that with this book is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it accessible, more accessible. Folks that call me up for coaching, they say, how do I do this without looking like that creepy referral guy? I get creepy and cheesy. And this is how to do it. So by me giving you the words, or at least sample word tracks and scripts, you're going to want to adjust them for your own personality and your clientele. All of this will become more accessible to you because I can't tell you how many times I've heard Paul, "Oh, I never thought about saying it that way." Or, "Oh, if I could say it that way, well, that makes sense. I could do that." So that's what this is about. Here's how to say these things. And then, you'll adjust them. You may not use what I say word for word, but now you're into the behavior that you want and that you've been putting off because you didn't feel comfortable.
Well, and it's interesting. I think of all the advisors that are listening right now, you have to internalize this language, and that's going to give you the confidence to use it. And I think far too many people say, I'm not comfortable with whatever script or whatever language, but they haven't internalized it and made it theirs. Like, tell me more. I was going like this with my hand, right. Pulling it towards me, because that's something I've probably learned from you sometime. And I'm being like, I'll be meeting and I'll say, tell me more. Come on, give it to me. So, I think make sure you guys take that note and grab Bill's book and make sure you take it and read it and highlight it and get that language into your business, because that's how you're going to grow. So staying on the book, Bill, I know it's broken into 6 parts. Maybe you could just give a high level overview of, why you did it that way and what are the parts?
Yeah, they're probably the 6 major strategies around. There's a lot of things I teach with advisors, but when we're staying with the introductions, the referrals, there's 6 main elements to this. The first is, and I'll call it part 1, it's the inner language. the mindset, the mistaken assumptions, the language that we say, the stories we say to ourselves that we believe. I just saw a quote earlier this morning. It says, don't believe what you think. And my thinking was, and don't believe what you believe, right? These are the stories we tell ourselves. And sometimes they're true and helpful, and sometimes they aren't, right? So it's the inner language around that. So, and that's where I talk about lifetime value. Is asking for introductions pushy? Is it going to hurt relationships? If you believe it, then you'll never do it. And then the key is to have a path that isn't risky and won't hurt. So that's the first one, the inner language. Second one is the language of being more referable, how to become super referable, which does two things. It creates incredible, or maybe three things: incredible client loyalty, right? Stickiness. You get to know people better. They stay with you. Therefore, you become more referable. Because of that, you will get more unsolicited referrals or introductions when you increase that client engagement. And then if you do ask, you've got more fertile ground, right? You've got people more likely to do it. So that's the language of being super referable. Then the language of promoting, encouraging introductions. That's where the don't keep me a secret comes into play. Let me give you one that every person should be doing. And that is teaching your clients what it would look like if they thought of someone who should maybe know you. What would that introduction look like? And the rule of thumb here is you're going to make sure it's comfortable, and then hopefully it'll be effective, relevant, right? So we got language around how to do that. Then the language of asking, the language of being proactive without pushing, without begging. I'll give you one little tip on that. The most powerful way to ask for introductions is what I'll call is the bullseye request, and that is specific people your clients know. If you're doing a good job, if you're getting to know your clients, you can't not know some people in their life, right? Sure. Whether it's children, whether it's siblings, whether it's other influencers, you got to know that. And that's to be a good advisor. And so that's a natural, easy place to start and prime the pump. The second ring from the bullseye on the target was what you mentioned already, which is these life events that are happening. If you run a few life events by folks, see, your clients know people that should know you, but they can't always think, they're not visualizing these folks. But when you say someone who's, just had a second child, or someone who's had their 10th child, or someone who just got married, or someone who's thinking about retirement, or someone just, parent died and left them some money, whatever the life events are, they go, oh yeah, I do know someone. Right. So that's part of the language around there, is triggering that. The next is the fun one, which is the language around concerns and objections. We don't have a heavy-handed approach to this. Most of the time, you're probably going to have to back off gracefully, professionally. I was doing a live presentation once, Paul, years ago, and one of the newer agents says, we've been taught to not back off until we get 5 objections. And I go, oh man, I don't want to be on the phone with you.
It's a quick way to get thrown out of the house.
It really is. And it also, if you get an objection or resist, you don't want to just, say, okay, no, never mind. So there's a way to deal with that. And part of that I've already covered, which is tell me more. And then you earn the right to share your perspective because you've genuinely listened to their perspective first. And then sometimes you back off, and that's cool. But you haven't lost it forever. I bet you everyone listening to this who's in production has experienced this. You've asked, you didn't get any for whatever reason, but later, a lot of those clients come back to say, hey, I think I got somebody for you, right? They just weren't ready at the time. And then the last one is the language of introductions, which is actually how do you construct and craft and negotiate the connection to the new prospect. And this is where it falls apart for a lot of folks. They have clients who are willing to refer, willing to introduce, but it's not happening. And so there's some technique and there's some language and some choices to be made there that will help you create a better connection, a better introduction. So that person's more likely to actually hop on that phone or that first Zoom with you and then take it from there. So those are the 6 strategies, all supported by lots of different language and scripts and word tracks.
It's awesome, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. So One question for you is there, what do you recommend? I have a, advisor, I have a service model, and maybe they're doing exactly what your advisor's doing, 2 Zooms or and 2 face-to-face meetings. But is there stuff they should be doing throughout the year that's a little more passive, like inviting them to events or remembering their birthday? Is there anything that you teach? Because we've been talking mostly about very belly to belly asking, but is there a way that you could, besides the service, that you should be dripping on them to earn some of these referrals?
Yes, absolutely.
Or I should say earn some of these introductions.
Thank you. Yeah. So what we know from the research is that there's a low correlation between satisfied clients and engaging referrals introductions. One study done by Julie Littlechild out of Toronto shows that only about 20% of satisfied clients will actually participate in this. What we need to create is engaged clients. All right. So what's an engaged client? Well, an engaged client is someone who feels connected, engaged with your value, which is not just your service, which is kind of that's table stakes. You got to be responsive and provide good service and all that. It's other ways you provide value, and that's through the questions you ask along the way. It's through the things you teach along the way. It's adjusting the plan along the way. It's all the different places you add value to the relationship. And then there's the personal connection side. And both of those have to be attended to at all times. Because if someone likes your value but doesn't really like you so much, trust you, life event comes along, they may be looking somewhere else, right? Yep. If someone likes you, trusts you, but they're not sure they're getting any value, well, same thing, and you're certainly not referable or introducible. So what we want to think about is not a client service plan, but a client engagement plan. What does that look like? Now, some of those things could be on the phone, on Zoom, in person, obviously annual or semi-annual reviews and whatnot. And then the things we can do personally. So client events, whether it's just breaking bread with one client or one couple, or whether it's having an event where you invite folks. Yeah, anytime you can create relationship that goes beyond the core work that you do. First of all, those are opportunities to build that side of the business. It's also opportunities to possibly serve them in some way. You may learn about something. If you walk someone to their car, walk them to the elevator, and I can't do it if it's a Zoom appointment, but if you find other ways to get in touch with clients, then you hear other things that are going on in their life that might not come out in the meeting.
Sure.
And that's a reason to serve. It could be money in your pocket as well. And you're also getting to know other people in their life because there's other people connected to those things. And you're building an inventory, a roster of possible introductions as well. So this idea of what are the 5-6 things I'm going to do over the course of this year that's going to add value to the relationship? Could be weekly, could be monthly if you have a newsletter. And what are the things am I going to do to create this personal connection?
I love it. I love it. And I love what you said earlier about engagement uses versus service versus engagement. We talked earlier about digital and computers and all that, but social media obviously has really become a big part of our world today and creeping its way into our business pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Is there a way that you need to show up on social media, or have you got to that point yet teaching where it's important that you show up a certain way to get that engagement and earn those introductions?
Yes. Let's go to LinkedIn a little bit. Let's get specific. And here's what we've discovered for the most part, and there's always exceptions. Just posting content doesn't do much.
Yep.
First of all, LinkedIn will only show your post to about 7 to 10% of the people you're connected with, unless it starts to get a lot of comments and a lot of juice. And then it'll start to show it to more people who comment, it shows it to their people. So posting isn't usually the best strategy. It has a little bit of its place. I get that. But commenting is really the way. So I interviewed a guy, Mando is his name. And for my podcast, it'll be going live. And probably by the time this comes out, Paul, that one will be live. He's built an incredible machine of new client acquisition through commenting. He does some posts, but it's mostly commenting. And by the way, if you're going to comment on someone's post or you're asking someone to comment on yours, comment before you like, because The comment link, LinkedIn gives it 6 points of juice. The like, it gives it 1 point. But if you like before you comment, the comment doesn't get any points because you've liked it. Yeah.
It's a good tip, guys. Make sure you rewind it and play that again.
Huge. Here's one way I use LinkedIn, and I've taught other advisors to do it. It's for those guys, gals that are the big fish out there. We call them whales sometimes in this business, elephant hunting, whatever you want to call it, right? The folks, the high level folks that you want to meet. So the first thing you want to do is you want to comment on a couple of their posts. Don't even try to engage with them in terms of a connection. You just comment and make it a thoughtful comment, 12 words or more. Maybe ask them a question about something they posted. And they'll go, who is this person who's asking me a question? Maybe click on their profile. What do they do?
Right? Sure.
And then after you've established a little something there, then you could perhaps comment. Right. And then in your comment, you say, you probably saw my comment on your post about XYZ. Really loved it. Let's connect on LinkedIn. What I found works really well for getting connections, by the way, the reason why, it's not, I'm expanding my network and I'd like to connect.
Yeah.
That's all about you. And most of those people don't care if you're expanding your network.
Sure.
Here's what I say. If I was connecting with you, Paul, I'd say, Paul, I'd have other things that are more relevant. It might be where you went to school. It might be something else I've learned about you. But I'd also say, let's connect on LinkedIn so we can support each other's posts when we see them.
That's great.
Right. So now, I want to support you. I want to give you something. And then if we get connected, I click the bell. So in your LinkedIn profile, so that when you make a post, LinkedIn will show it to me. So there's a lot we can get into, and I know you don't want to do it, but LinkedIn rewards conversations.
Love it.
All right.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, Bill, where do we get the book?
Well, go to languageofreferrals.com, languageofreferrals.com. I think also the languageofreferrals.com points to it. And you'll learn a little more about the book, what it covers. And then from there, you can click over to Amazon if you want to get it on Audible or Kindle or the paperback, et cetera. So where all books are sold, I guess.
Yep. And when you think of this book, everyone, think of this as getting a master's on getting introductions. I mean, Bill's been doing this forever. He spent a lot of time here. There's a lot of advisors that are using his language still, 10, 15, 20 years later here at Barnum. So I think it's really critical. So my last question for you, Bill, what's next? What's next? You've been, you're just going and going and going. And so what's next?
Well, I tried retirement and
you did?
I did. Yeah, I cut down. I was down to about 20 hours a week and playing a lot of golf and that's all good. But I got so many ideas and so many things I want to do and I'm passionate. So I do have a what's next and I'll try to be as succinct as I can. So forever, my passion was driven by serving advisors, agents, advisors, wealth managers, you name it, with the important work that you do, helping you reach more people because the work you do is important. You bring financial dignity, you help people increase their wealth, whatever wealth means to them. And there's a ripple effect to what you do. You help one person in one family, it's helping other people in the family. It could be helping employees in their business. Incredible ripple effect. So that's what's driven me all these years. That's my why behind what I do. And what I also want to do is I want to start to expand a little bit more than just the financial advisors. And that is a little more direct to clients in that financial literacy, financial education.
Love it.
And so I'm writing a book and with a co-author this time, and it's a parable book. So it's a story with a lesson around the beliefs, the mistaken limiting beliefs, the unhelpful emotions, the unproductive behaviors that every human engages in around money, right? Money's complicated. It hits all aspects of our life and our psyche. And it's going to be taking place in a bank robbery. So it's these robbers and these folks surrounded by money. We're going to have it be a little fun because to take the edge off the fact that it's a bank robbery and all that. But we've interviewed a real hostage negotiator. Wow. We got his perspective. Later today, I'm interviewing a hostage, a gal that was actually taken by gunpoint in a bank. So we're going to make this as real as possible. But in it, we're going to teach about beliefs and about some of the principles, wealth management, et cetera.
Well, it's interesting. One of my favorite business books, simple one, is Who Moved My Cheese? And it sounds a little bit around that flavor.
Right. That's a parable book, Who Moved My Cheese? The Go-Giver, Bob Berg, and his co-author, those are parable books.
Love it.
And so good stuff.
Well, Bill Cates, thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody, please, small steps, big wins. Go on, like us, share us, and keep going back and forth to listen to this one, guys, because grab some of that language that you got from Bill and grab one of his books, and you'll be on your way to growing your practice. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.